First of all, I just want to point out, if we can go back to the map, the blue areas represent areas the Israelis have entered. And on paper, which is what we're looking at, that looks like a lot. But I think I just want to emphasize the point I think I heard you making, which is that just because the Israelis are in those areas does not mean that they have secure control over them. And from the perspective of the resistance, they're not going to try to establish, a traditional front line with trenches and say, we're going to hold the Israelis here. In a guerrilla war, you actually can't stop the large conventional army from invading and entering your territory, nor would you try. But then what you do is you harass them, you ambush them, you come back behind them, you come up behind their lines, and you make it so that they can never relax for even a moment, because they never know where the resistance is. And some of the videos you talked about, which again, I apologize to our audience that we're not showing them because of the censorship on this platform, where when we have shown them on a previous occasion, our entire episode was deleted afterwards, and we want to keep it up for people to see. But Jon, you on your Twitter account, you do post some of these videos. Is that correct? So people can find them. Maybe we can put Jon's Twitter account up on the scroll at the bottom so that people can find them there. And some of the videos we've seen just in the last few days include on those occasions, as we've been saying now for a couple of weeks, the Israelis rarely, if ever, dare to get out of their tanks or armored vehicles. But what we saw is that on occasions when they have been targeted very precisely and very lethally either by Palestinian snipers, marksmen using high-powered rifles at a distance. And there was one video where at least one Israeli soldier was clearly killed in such an operation, and others where they have fired these thermobaric grenades into buildings that destroy an entire room. So that's one thing. But now, I think you're being very unfair to the Israelis, Jon. And I need to push back a little bit, because you
as
said...
usual.
Yeah, as usual, Jon. You said that they've achieved nothing. Well, Ophir Gendelman, the Arabic language spokesperson for Benjamin Netanyahu, put out a video. I think also the Israeli army put out the same video or a version of it that we're going to take a look at now. And they're claiming that this is a tunnel near al-Shifa hospital. Now, remember, of course, that they claim that they claimed that there was this James Bond-like multi-level command bunker under al-Shifa, and they did this very imaginative animation of it at the end of October. But let's look at what they say they found. I think we're able to run that video. Might take a second. Here we go. Yeah. So what we're seeing here, I'm going to narrate it, but tell me if
can you pause just for 1 sec before it goes down the hole? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you see the soldiers? If we could go back,
maybe you'll go back.
Soldiers, look to the left and watch the soldiers sitting there. So this is tunnel exploration for the Israelis. So there's 4 of them there playing on a joystick.
Right.
Driving a drone.
So this is clearly a drone, because people don't tend to fly like this. So we can see, because we're coming in from above like this from the air, that this is a drone. And so let's let the video run. And we're going to go down. We're going down this mysterious shaft. We don't know what it is. Of course, Israel say it's a resistance tunnel, but as we know, there's underground infrastructure in Gaza City, just like in any other city. So we've seen manholes and cable shafts and fuel tanks. But this seems to be some kind of shaft going to the bottom. And then, so the drone gets down, it's got a light on it, and then something mysterious is going to happen in a few seconds when we see the drone is looking around, it's flying around, it's looking up the shaft. That seems like it's a spiral staircase or something. Not exactly sure, but let's keep watching. And then, yeah, it's looking around. So far, I don't see any. I don't see 𝐓𝐿 𝐄𝐿 or Mohammed 𝐓𝐿 down there. Don't see too much going on down there, but keep with it. The suspense is very. Oh, see what happened there? Tamara, can you go back a few seconds? Just a few seconds. All right. Yeah. Watch this. Observe. Observe. Oh, the video was edited. And then let's let it run. What happens? Let's keep going. The video quality is now very different. It's a sort of a little grainier. But look, suddenly this drone that we saw flying in has grown legs, because you can clearly see that this is now a handheld camera, and you can see that as the video runs, it's moving from side to side as this drone magically grew legs and started walking through this tunnel. So I think and then I think it gets to the end of the tunnel, and they call that a blast door. That's what the Israelis have put on there. And a firing hole, that sounds very scary. We don't know what it is, and we don't know where this video is from. What we can say is that this video tweeted by Ofer Gendelman is 2 pieces of video that have been edited together. And in the first one, it's very clear that it's taken from a drone which flies. And the second part is something that has legs, whether it's the Yeti that you have up in Canada. Is that where the Yeti lives? Or perhaps a dog that has been trained to walk on its hind legs. Or
well, they have dogs. They
they
send
do.
dogs.
We did see the fake dog video a couple of weeks back, also tweeted by Ofer Gendelman. But this didn't look like a dog. A dog seems to me like it would have moved more rapidly. But the point is, this is what they are putting out as their evidence. And so isn't that impressive to you, John? Doesn't that look like an underground Disney castle full of Hamas commanders and rockets? Were you not?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I noticed is that that's not underneath 𝐓𝐿. So they made it sound like there was a command center, as if people were all going into 𝐓𝐿 down into this lair, and then all of a sudden they've cut out on the far corner of the campus something. We know the Israelis say that there's 1,300 tunnels. If you dig down in various spots in downtown Gaza City, you're presumably going to find a tunnel. I think the thing that's interesting to me, whether that video is fake or not, the things that stood out to me were that that's only 10 meters down, and they lost control of whatever that was, whether it was a robot, whether the drone had the ability to have legs that could move, because they do have robots that go down into these tunnels.
But they do not have flying robots that then sprout legs and walk through them. That they definitely don't have.
We haven't seen those for sure.
We haven't seen those. But just to emphasize one point that we've made previously and you've emphasized, which is that they do not go down the tunnels. They have a standing order not to go down the tunnels. And we saw in the first part of that video the soldiers sitting there on what looked like a picnic mat, posing for
playing with a joystick, right?
Playing with the joystick. So that suggests to me that whatever that tunnel was with the mysterious creature on legs walking through it, it was, from what we know, where they haven't even said they've gone down tunnels. Like even the Israeli army, as far as I've seen in their briefings, have never said, we sent people down a tunnel. No. So this is, again, to me, based on what we know, and based on the fact that Ofer Gendelman has lied so often, is another fake. And as you say, even if this was a tunnel, it's not under the hospital, and it's not a major command center, at least, anything
And they're not
matching what
going
they
down
would.
into it. So if that's where they're saying their people are. Okay, so here's the things that I would see in that video. We without saying it's fake, the things that are in that video that are significant to me, that would be significant to all the 1,300 tunnels that span 500 kilometers, apparently, under Gaza, is that door that they showed, with that thick, heavy metal door with what they identified as a firing hole. That's very much true. There's doors all through the tunnel network that are so thick that you have to breach them with significant munitions. And they also have firing positions, which means, like, so imagine this view, imagine this is you, and then you show up on the door, they pop open that firing hole and shoot you. Or they rig the door so that when you try to blast it, it blasts backwards on top of you and buries you. So the Israelis have to first go down into the tunnel, which they're not doing. But then once they're down in the tunnel, they have this extraordinary task of being in that tiny space that's barely wide enough for one person. And then they have to bring all their munitions down there. And we can see with whatever robot that is that they've sent down there, at the end of this clip, you can see it drops off. The footage drops off because they lose connection with that device. See, it loses connection, which makes sense because they can't just send their drones an unlimited number of meters down. So when they see that firing hole, Palestinians can defend themselves through that hole. And then the Israelis have to figure out how they're going to breach that door, that thick, heavy metal door. And they have to breach that door in such a way that they don't alert the fighters on the other side that they're coming, that they don't blow it up too much, that they blow up everything on top of them. They can't really leave the tunnel to blow up the door, because once they do that, they've just cleared a path for the Palestinians to attack them. And at each, I mean, we don't know, we haven't been in the tunnels, but you can imagine that they have those big, heavy doors very often. That's a very important part of the defense of the tunnels, is to have those thick doors.
Which would also make it more complicated, even more complicated, if not impossible, going back to a discussion we had a few weeks ago, or what seems like a few weeks ago. It may have been last week, given how time stretches in this situation, but about the idea of flooding or flooding the tunnels with gas, that it would be very hard, even if those doors aren't airtight, which I assume they're not, it would still be very hard to get significant volumes of whatever it is you wanted to pump down there.
And the tunnels were built with that in mind, right? So when they're building the tunnel, they're imagining somebody coming down in the tunnel. What happens when they get here? What happens when they get to X, Y, Z place? And they have preparations for each of those. And so this idea that you're going to root out every fighter in Hamas, and this is what you're saying up on the above ground level, where you're massacring tens of thousands of civilians, to actually fight them on the underground level, it's a very, very difficult task. It's possible that that was a dog that we saw, but even sending dogs down, because the dogs need air at some point going down. So then you have to put masks on the dogs, and then they can't sniff as well. And so the dogs aren't even a good solution. All of the drone dropping out, or whatever that was dropping out, gives you a clue about how difficult communications are. They can't use their normal radios. They can't use their normal communication tools, but 𝐓𝐡𝐞 can, because they have an internally wired system under there. So they can communicate through the tunnels, in the tunnels, and the Israelis can't. Then the Israelis have to get enough people down there and enough explosives down there to explode that thick, heavy door but not collapse the tunnel on top of themselves or trip a booby trap, which is another video that we saw last week. We saw the Israelis tripping a booby trap in Beit Hanun that killed 4 of them, because the tunnel entrances can be booby trapped. And then ultimately, when you get down to the final boss, you know, like in the battle to get Yahya Sinwar, the people in the tunnel have the capacity to just blow the tunnel up as a mass casualty situation and just take every Israeli with them. And so there's a lot of very compelling military reasons why the Israelis are not going down into the tunnels, and why, because of that, there can be no military success that goes beyond killing people and evacuating a hospital and making people, you know, like Ahmed and Yusuf decide whether their sick, family members should go on the 10-kilometer death march. Those are the only successes that Israel can come up with, because the fighters are under the ground in these tunnels that have been built for this fight. That's what they're built for. And the Israelis are up on the top, sitting on the edge of the tunnel, flying. I mean, I'll give them that. The drone is impressive. You could see the drone hit the walls and not drop. So it's some kind of, it's not a quadcopter. It's not your regular drone, or it would have crashed. So they have fancy tools. But once it gets to 10 meters, they lost communication with that. And the Israelis themselves say the tunnels are 65 meters deep. And so it's like, it's not even close. It's not even like they're almost there. And that's why Ofer Gendelman putting out that video of the dog down there, like, it's just such a joke when you saw that fake video from a couple weeks ago, and then you compare it to those soldiers, you know, sitting in a circle, looking like they're on a picnic mat, but they also had 4 guys pointing their guns around to make sure that they weren't ambushed, because it's resource intensive to carry out these operations around the tunnel. You have to bring troops in, you have to bring explosives in.
Well, it seems that they feel pretty safe around al-Shifa hospital, because the only people shooting guns around the hospital are the Israeli soldiers themselves.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.